And we're live.
Hello!
Hello!
La la la. I was just thinking maybe one of these days we should have like a real professional opening or something, you know? I feel like
That's why we have Colin, who is going to help us get to the next level. This is somewhat of a sad occasion because we are making another change yet again with our show. This is going to be our last Wednesday show.
we have been constructively evicted from our time slot by due dissidents.
Got to give the people what they want. They want to watch our show, but they want to watch other people's shows as well at the same time. So, we're going to have to accept that. That's not the only sad news for this evening. Unfortunately, our first guest, Hannah Riley, is not able to attend. She is dealing with...
I had my whole intro ready. I've got the article pinned up.
Well, she's already agreed to come on next Thursday, so she's already in line to come on for our first Thursday show.
Okay, but I want it noted that I'm very prepared.
I understand, but she is, unfortunately, in upstate New York. The connection there is apparently not very good. And we do have to accept the fact that with our small but mighty channel, sometimes our guests deal with the same technological problems that we do.
This is true. And guys, just in case you didn't know, I mean, we didn't really put it out there, but Hannah Riley is a journalist and activist that's based in Atlanta. Apparently she's in New York now, but she's based in Atlanta, and she has been covering the Cop City, the developments there for the past couple of years. She's been following this ordeal, and she's also been pretty active in protesting against it. So, and she wrote a really great article in The Nation a couple of months ago. So I really wanted to talk with her. So we'll get to do that next week.
We do have a very special guest who is coming on this evening, a friend of the show, Medea Benjamin from Code Pink. Obviously, there is lots to discuss there. The war in Ukraine rages on, but there's always something going on with the military-industrial complex. And what a time to have her come on, because there was no greater pillager of the environment than the military-industrial complex. And we are seeing right now just how devastating the almost insurmountable heat wave that we are dealing with on a regular basis, which is becoming the new normal. For those of you who do not live in South Florida, we deal with this on a regular basis. At this time of year, it is 95 degrees and unbearably humid to the point in which you could have a hard time breathing outside.
What also more importantly is I've been hearing about the water temperature. It's like so many consecutive days that the water down in Miami in the ocean water is over 100 degrees. So that's bleaching all the coral, obviously. And so it's like, this is really a disaster. This is a disaster. And at this point, honestly, like I do not see how this can come back in any way. Like, that's just crazy to me that the water is 100 degrees off in the Atlantic Ocean. That's like, we're like, shy of being boiled. The earth is literally trying to boil us off of it.
Well, as the great George Carlin would say, the earth is going to shake us off like a bad cold. And whoever is able to survive will be part of the new revolution, if you will, because that's what's going to happen. The system will not course correct. You will have to literally rip it from its cold, dead hands. We're not going to really dive into Mitch McConnell, but for those of you who saw his press conference this afternoon,
oh my God! No, we need to talk about that. I mean, that was crazy.
I mean, I wasn't going to get into Kevin Spacey, but we can talk about Mitchie McConnell.
I mean, guys, if you hadn't seen that, I mean, look, Mitch McConnell for years, I've always thought he's like the immortal Grim Reaper, and no matter how old he gets, he's always seemed totally sharp. Like throughout all of it, even when he maybe didn't seem physically sharp, he was always mentally sharp. And then today, it was just like he wasn't there. And it was extremely, I mean, they're going to have to do some PR on that.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to do some PR. And that's, of course, what happens when you do a live stream. There are stories that will pop up at the last minute. Senator McConnell has been the Senate Majority Leader in the GOP for quite some time. Needless to say, if you can, as Johnny on the spot Colin is showing you right now.
He's just frozen mid-sentence. But that's the thing. He was mid-sentence.
And it wasn't like he was frozen for a second. He is frozen, as you can see here, for what is probably about 30 seconds before somebody finally decides to step up. Senator Tuberville, I believe, on his right, comes up and is like, hey, what's going on here? Everything okay?
No, you know what he says to him? I heard what he said to him. And here's what's interesting about it. So he leaned over and very, very politically proper said, did you want to say anything else or should we go back now? Like as if he didn't stop mid-sentence. Yes, he wanted to say something else because he didn't even finish the sentence he was saying. And
well, he didn't even talk. And I think he probably was trying to talk and he couldn't do it.
Well, as Miss Anonymous is saying in the chat that she thought it looked like a stroke, and that is a possibility. I mean, something went down there. Something was definitely off because I've never seen him like that.
Yeah, no, he was definitely having a moment, if you will, of some form of paralysis. And what that ultimately is going to lead to, I don't know.
Nothing. Nothing.
I mean,
just like
again,
Dianne Feinstein. Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, Dianne Feinstein, at least cognitively, McConnell is there. Feinstein is not cognitively there, and no one is willing to take her out. And you're kind of got, something in between with President Biden where, he has his lucid moments from time to time, but is clearly feeling the effects of advanced age. And, in his case, you don't know for sure what it is. But there is major concern here for what's going on with this, will not give up the brass ring, if you will, the old guard, the boomer era of the United States Congress. It's not just the Senate, but obviously in the Senate.
And it's also both parties. It's both parties.
Yes, absolutely. Now, McConnell's not the only one who's guilty of doing this, but it's painfully obvious that he doesn't belong there. And again, you can say, yeah, he doesn't belong there, but what are you going to replace him with? I mean, it's not like you're going to replace him with a representative who's not bought and paid for by corporate special interests. So you bring in somebody. So you bring in somebody who's in their 50s, big deal.
Maybe if Bernie ever became speaker, then maybe we'd have somebody not bought by. But that's the only person in there. Rand Paul, but he's not even forefront of his own party. He's always standing alone, like sometimes the lone voice of reason in his people.
Well, that's why I think Thomas Massie is going to attempt to get to the upper chamber, but we'll see if he's willing to take on McConnell in the process. The problem is, of course, is that McConnell's election is not until 2026. So he's just kind of stuck. And
he looks stuck.
The problem for the Democrats is that if they go after McConnell, that's just going to ramp up the attacks on Biden even harder. And that's this cat and mouse game that the two major parties play with each other. So for the Democrats, they're just going to pretend like what happened to McConnell today didn't really happen. And so
right, because right now they feel like the retaliation just wouldn't be worth it. And they're probably right. They're going to lay as low as they possibly can. They're not going to poke their heads out unless they absolutely have to.
The problem, of course, is that Senator McConnell is very much like a lot of others that are there right now that are just trying to hold on for dear life, not just to their seats, but to this completely corporate captured system that they have built around themselves and have made themselves very rich. Ironically, McConnell is only about a third as rich as Nancy Pelosi is, and they've been in Congress, one in the House, one in the Senate, for, I believe, the same amount of time.
Yeah, but look, you're comparing apples and oranges. I mean, Nancy Pelosi was a bundler before she was a congressperson. Nancy Pelosi's entire existence is a rainmaker. So I don't know Mitch McConnell's background, but she's the only person she is the rainmaker, and that is why she's where she is.
That's true. And McConnell is where he is because he's always been ready, willing, and able to do the bidding of corporate power. And he's been at it since the mid-'80s. Actually, I could be wrong. I think he's been there even longer than that. But you can tell.
He does look like the immortal.
I wouldn't even say that he looks immortal. I would just say that he is there and plans to be there until he dies. That is the sad reality of what our leadership looks like in this country today. It's very scary how dangerous a predicament we're facing because these representatives will not give up power willingly. They will not do it.
No.
The only time that ever ends up happening is if there is a major, major opportunity that's even greater than being a representative. One of the potential positions that has been floated in for right now, Ron DeSantis, because of his pretty much failing presidential campaign right now, is if he were to drop out and endorse Trump, Trump would make him the attorney general if he were to become the president. And considering I don't see him running for the U.S. Senate like Rick Scott did after he is out of the governor's seat in 3 years or 3.5 years, whatever the time frame would be. They're always looking for their next opportunity. But for somebody like Mitch McConnell, you cannot go higher than the Senate majority leader, at least for a guy like him. There is nowhere higher.
Yeah, he can't win a national race of any kind. I mean, let's not be ridiculous. He probably couldn't even, if he was starting right now as this type of personality, he wouldn't be able to win the seat he has.
No, absolutely not.
So he only is in that seat just because of history and time. He's there. That's it. So no, he couldn't win anything.
It's the same issue we deal with Debbie. When somebody's able to grab a power structure that is probably the highest they'll ever ascertain, to get them out of it, you literally have to rip it from their cold, dead hands. There is no other way, because they will not go voluntarily. Why would they? They have no other skill other than just being shills for corporate power.
You know what amazes me, though? Here's what amazes me. It's so fascinating. Like, I do not understand this mindset at all. At all. Like, to me, the thought of being Nancy Pelosi's age, if I'm not sitting on a porch in the mountains watching like the deer go by, something has gone terribly wrong in my life. Like, I do not understand this inkling to not pass the baton.
People
I really don't. Like,
That's
the point. I don't know. I find it ridiculous. It's like a constant reminder that they do not see this as a term of service. They truly see it as a grift and a career, and they sit there with their insider trading, and it's so disgusting. But I do think that for people who may see this like a public service, they might not want to be there for eternity. I know I wouldn't. I know that that would be, look, man, life is too precious to spend it fighting with people for eternity. At some point, you got to bow out and just go, smell the roses.
Yeah, and unfortunately, those roses will be at their funeral, no pun intended. So we do have a pretty big developing story as well that we are going to cover because I couldn't have picked a better headline for the story that we are going to jump into. Because, of course, when it comes to somebody like Kevin Spacey, the first thing that is top of mind after the not guilty verdict is how quickly can we get Kevin Spacey back as a Hollywood leading man? Because why not? Will Hollywood welcome Kevin Spacey back following his not guilty verdict? Sources ran whether studios will roll out the red carpet for the two-time Oscar winner. Look, let's just start and just get this out of the way. Kevin Spacey is a phenomenal actor. One of the best I've ever seen. His portrayal in multiple films, whether it was The Usual Suspects, whether it was in Seven, of course, American Beauty, of which he won the Best Actor Oscar. He won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for The Usual Suspects.
House of Cards.
House of Cards as President Frank Underwood. He is, look, there was a movie he made with Jeff Bridges that I thought that he was great in, was K-Pax.
Love that. I love that movie. Yeah,
and he is a thespian of the highest order, but he is a predator. I don't care that there is a not guilty verdict. There are too many stories of him abusing. This type of thing, that type of thing doesn't just get made up by 1, 2, or a dozen people saying that there was
You did email Medea. I'm sorry. You did email Medea the link, right?
Yes, I did. But you can confirm with her if you need.
No. She just logged on. She just texted me and says, I don't see a Zoom. Are we still on? And I'm like, we sent a StreamYard. I just wanted to make sure. Sorry.
Yes, I sent it earlier.
Okay.
So I do think that, from his perspective, Do I think that he wants to get back into acting? Absolutely. It's all he knows. This is his life's work. And you know what? He's great at it.
I just feel like we're at a point now where it's like, I'm not minimizing anything that he did. I'm really not, because I think it's gross. And I think anybody who preys on people is gross. But it's like, we're getting to the point where we're not going to be able to watch anybody. And that's what's so depressing about it. I mean, it's, he doesn't obviously, to me, reach like the Bill Cosby level, but he definitely falls on that side of the spectrum. And it's just not good. And yes, Usual Suspects was a phenomenal movie, Kaiser Sose, but it's just not good. Do I think of him like I think of Bill Cosby or even Roman Polanski or no, or Woody Allen? No. But again, it's a very wide spectrum.
Yeah. And again, his story has to do with, basically forcing himself on people, various forms of sexual assault. Now, thank goodness there's no stories of, at least based on what I've read, there aren't stories of forcible rape and things like that.
Right.
Which obviously would put him in the category of the Bill Cosbys and Roman Polanskis of the world. Nevertheless, it doesn't take away from the fact that he was an abuser and he took advantage of his position, as a lot of people at that level do tend to do. Kevin Spacey is a legitimate A-list actor.
I don't know that he'll ever come back to that. I don't know.
No,
I mean, Mel Gibson hasn't been able to come back. Some people are just, they just have such a vibe about them that they're sort of like irredeemable.
I will let you know Mel Gibson is coming back. He's in the Continental, the spinoff of John Wick, as one of the main people.
Okay, so that is not a selling point to me, Colin. Mel Gibson did Braveheart and The Patriot, and so no, being in a John Wick sequel is not a comeback.
The Patriot is one of my favorite movies.
I have a lot of anger about Mel Gibson because both Braveheart and The Patriot are amazing movies that I loved, and now I can't even watch them. And by the way, Heath Ledger in The Patriot was just delicious. So it's like now I can't even watch that because I can't even stomach Mel Gibson because he disgusts me.
Well, the problem with Mel Gibson is that he is a legitimate anti-Semite. It's not a one-off situation where he was caught on a hot mic, just basically saying that, Hollywood is Jewville and all that stuff. No, he has made it very clear in his art and in his personal life that he does not care for the Jewish community. And that's on him. If you're going to judge, again, it's one thing if you're going to judge the Jewish community exclusively on the likes of, let's say, the Rothschilds or the George Soroses of the world and say that they're a bad representation of the Jewish community at large.
Yeah.
They have to take it a whole step further and say that all Jews are like this.
Well, see, you know what? And this would be, this would be almost like, you're right. Like if it was one bad take then you'd have like a Michael Richards situation, right? Like where somebody just sort of went off and lost their cool or whatever. But the thing with Mel Gibson is it isn't even just the anti-Semitic rant, the fact that his father never accepted Vatican II. So he was raised before. He's not even up to the current Vatican rules. Like that's how old school his dad raised him. But like all of that
this is also part of the reason why I cannot for the life of me stand any of this bull BS when it comes to the church and how it affects the ability to do their art.
But let me just finish, because the bigger issue with him to me is that he's an abusive bully. Okay, so the stuff and the recordings of him, how he spoke to his girlfriend at the time, like the way that he spoke to her, that's disgusting. And it doesn't matter whether or not he beat her up or she ended up in the hospital. None of that necessarily needs to happen for me to find somebody to be disgusting. And the way he spoke to her, this is also my issue with Christian Bale. When I hear somebody speak to people, which is why I don't like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, when I hear people talk to people in such a despicable, condescending manner, I cannot with them. So that's my thing with Mel Gibson. It's not the one rant.
I agree. And that's also the thing about Spacey is that he was known for being a complete jackass and just a nasty, nasty guy, very difficult to work with, as is the case of a lot of these, A-list stars as they basically become, products of their own hubris, if you will, thinking that whatever they do is correct. In his case, he was a great talent. And it's a question of how much of that great talent do you want to put up with if you're in the industry?
Okay, hold on. She doesn't see that email. So it goes
Do you
to,
want me to resend it?
yeah, Medea dot, you know her email.
Yes, I know
I'm
her.
not going to read it.
Well, yeah,
But
don't
make
do
sure you put the dot.
that. No, I did do that.
Okay.
And I'm
She
going
says
to
she
send it again.
Okay. All right. I'm telling her we're resending.
So I do think that, Spacey is 100%, he is going to get another opportunity. Somebody is going to take a chance on him. And if he's in a film, people are going to go see it.
You know, that I would. I'm not, to me, he has not crossed over. I'm just saying, to me, like, I don't look at him and feel repulsed that I couldn't even sit through a movie. I don't. So, and I'm not saying that that couldn't at some point happen based on future behavior, but at this point right now, he hasn't ruined House of Cards for me. Like, I feel like Bill Cosby has destroyed my childhood. You know what I mean?
The funny thing is, at the end of the last episode that he was in House of Cards, if they had ended it with Robin Wright looking at the camera saying "my turn," which of course was a direct shot at Hillary Clinton, that would have been the perfect way to close the series. He admitted his guilt. He was clearly going down. The House of Cards had completely fallen apart.
But I think, well, there's more to it than that. You had probably other people had contracts for more seasons. I mean, I don't know that, what they were already tied into at the point that this all went down with him. So they're not going to necessarily screw a whole bunch of cast and crew based on that. I mean, there's other people involved, as we see from our friends over at SAG-AFTRA.
Spacey's trial involved 4 complaints against the actor, including one from a man who alleged that Spacey repeatedly grabbed his crotch while he served as creative director of London's Old Vic Theatre in the early 2000s. Spacey admitted to a consensual relationship with the man that involved some touching, but insisted that he respected the man's boundaries. A second man accused Spacey of pinning him against a wall and grabbing his crotch at a charity event in 2005. Though Spacey denied ever meeting the individual, while a third alleged that after meeting Spacey at a pub, he and a group went back to the actor's rented house in Gloucestershire. Did I say that right? Gloucestershire?
It's sheer.
I got it right without you correcting me, so that's good. Where Spacey allegedly kissed his neck, grabbed his penis, and said, "Be cool, be cool." Spacey described the encounter as a clumsy pass he made while drunk and later tried to apologize for, though he denied it was a sexual assault. Meanwhile, the most serious complaint, causing a person to engage in penetrative sexual activity, carried a potential life sentence had Spacey been convicted. This one involved a fourth man who alleged that he woke up at Spacey's London apartment and found the actor performing sex on him, believing he may have been rendered unconscious somehow by the actor. Spacey described the encounter as consensual and provided telephone records that contradicted the alleged victim's account. So there you go. And what I can say is, when you're rich and you have access to the best lawyers money can buy, there's always a way of creating reasonable doubt. And that is essentially what happened. And that is why Kevin Spacey is a free man.
Okay, can we now switch to somebody who uses their having money to do the good things and talk about Snoop?
Yes, I can.
Now, we don't really have to go too far into it. I mean, Medea will be here in a few minutes, but if anybody doesn't know this, Snoop Dogg, who I'm very fond of, has canceled his show in solidarity with the writers and actors in Los Angeles. So, like, I just think that was a very cool thing to do in solidarity. I don't think, obviously, most musicians are not doing that. So I just thought that was pretty bold of him to, say, I'm not going to perform in LA in solidarity with them. I just appreciate Snoop.
I think it is very courageous of him to do that. I think that there are others that will too.
I hope so. He's definitely setting the example, but he is someone, he's got 0 F's to give, which is one of the reasons I like him so much. And he is at the point where he is successful enough where he can take a stand, and it's a smart move to do when it's something you believe in and it shows your level of integrity, which obviously he has some. And I think that's really cool.
So he decided that the Hollywood Bowl, due to the writer and actor strikes, he should not be performing. And
He's under no obligation to stand with them. You know, like I see concerts are happening all over the place. I haven't seen a single person stand up and say that.
Yeah, and I've never been to a show of his. I was a fan of his when I was a kid. I found his hip hop talent to be very good compared to just about anybody else. He had a very unique style.
I don't think I've ever even heard his music, man. I am not a fan of hip hop. I just like Snoop Dogg.
No, it's pretty vulgar, but you know,
it's not my style. I respect it as an art form, like classical music. It's just not something I want to listen to, but I so like him. I like him as an adult. I never knew of him when I was younger, but I so like him now.
Well, it was going to be a big one. His much anticipated 2-night Hollywood Bowl engagement to mark the 30th anniversary of his career-making album Doggy Style. Go figure. Canceled Tuesday with the artist citing the ongoing strikes by writers and actors. The shows are the latest casualties of the strikes by the Writers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA against the Hollywood studios, which are represented by the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. Shocking. In a statement posted online, Snoop Dogg wrote, "We regret to inform you that due to the ongoing strike and the uncertainty of when this will be over, we need to cancel the Hollywood Bowl show. We continue to stand in solidarity with all of our brothers and sisters in the WGA and SAG-AFTRA during this difficult time and remain hopeful that the AMPTP will come back to the negotiating table with a real proposal and we can all get back to work." Yeah, that's going to be quite a while. He'll be waiting around quite a bit.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. And, you know, not like he needs the money from those shows or anything, but I just still think it shows a certain amount of integrity.
It does show a certain amount of integrity. Will it get to the point where, you know, everyone is going to turn against these major studio producers and
hopefully
investors?
Hopefully.
You hope that they will, but they'll always find a way to get back at them. What I will say is this. The people that have spent the last several years in Hollywood in particular, that went out of their way to trash Bernie Sanders and progressives who were fighting for the very things that they're fighting for right now.
Exactly.
To kiss Hillary Clinton's ass, to kiss Joe Biden's ass.
Hey, we're looking at you, Bradley Whitford.
And especially to kiss Barack Obama's ass, who hasn't said a damn thing about this.
Nope.
This is all you need to know. So, do I want the actors and writers to succeed in their efforts? Yes, because a significant portion of the people who are leading the effort at the very top, specifically David Jolliffe and Francis Fisher, these are huge Bernie supporters. But there's also a lot of people over the course of this entire experiment, if you will, of seeing just how powerful workers in Hollywood actually are. Newsflash, they're not that powerful. But now they're going to find out exactly what that's all about. Because the people that are out there on the front lines fighting with them are the people that were out there fighting on the front lines for Bernie Sanders. The people who fight on behalf of the likes of Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden wouldn't be caught dead out there with their soft shoes on, days on end, trying to get this taken care of and ensure that you get those rights.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a
people again. They completely do not understand the whole SAG-AFTRA. They see the big name people and they're like, "Oh, we're not taking up a collection for those people." But it's like that is such a small amount of the SAG-AFTRA. The SAG-AFTRA, the writers, people. These are working actors. Most of them don't make the $26,000 or whatever minimum to get the health insurance. Like this is not. These are working
not
people.
A racket, I don't know what is.
Your shows happen. Like all of your happy TV happens for most of people. I'm not talking about like the big name people. Those people don't, this is not about them. They're lending their privilege in this.
And one person I do want to give a shout out to is Adam Sandler. And why is that? Adam Sandler does not make what I consider to be quality films. He just doesn't. But what is true about Adam Sandler is that he is a Hollywood player, and almost anyone at the highest and entry level within the industry, if he's making a film, want to work on his film. Why? Because he takes care of his actors, and it's always a carefree environment. It is not a stressful
I bet it's
environment.
so much fun. Oh my God. The fact that he has like gets people like Henry Winkler and all these people like they have to have so much fun. And his movies are ridiculous. There's a couple I've liked, but I do like Adam Sandler. And you know what? The Hanukkah song will forever be the best.
Well, here's a nice little song for all the Jewish kids out there who never get to hear any Hanukkah songs.
I had to pull over when I first heard that in the car. I was laughing so hard. The very first time I heard his Hanukkah song, when he's like, O.J. Simpson, not a Jew.
Are you sure about that one?
Right after it happened.
Well, the album was called What the Hell Happened to Me. If you guys have not heard that album, I highly recommend you go out and listen to it, because that's not the only great song on there. Piece of Ishkar is also a very, very funny thing. There's Toll Booth Willie. There's a lot of good stuff. That's when Adam Sandler cared, and that's when he was a very, very funny comic at one time. But he made it. He got to the top of the mountain. He was able to successfully build.
You don't fully appreciate Big Daddy to the level it should be appreciated.
And Big Daddy was the first movie, I believe, produced under the banner of Happy Madison Productions. So as a result, that's what he was able to accomplish. So needless to say, we are on the side of the Hollywood workers, even the ones who sided with Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, because this is about the working class movement. Hopefully you guys will recognize that going forward, depending on who's running for president next year. Wink, wink. And what you ultimately choose to do with that.
It'll be like, which one of these things is doing his own thing? Which one of these things doesn't belong? And it'll be the guy with the afro. I'll give you a hint. It'll be the guy with the afro. But like, it's just, yeah.
So without further ado, we have a very special intro video for our main guest for this evening. She's somebody that we greatly admire, because she definitely puts her money where her mouth is when it comes to activism in the United States. Here we go.
I was in high school during the Vietnam War. My sister got, as a present from her boyfriend in Vietnam, the ear of a Viet Cong. And it so shocked me that it really directed my whole life to be against war and against militarism. Unfortunately, the peace movement was not capable of stopping the Bush administration, and here we are today.
Well, can we get an open investigation? That's it, into whether or not it's true.
I can't commit to that right now, but I can take your request back.
Well, that's one of our requests on here, and we think, it's not a very long piece to read Cy Hirsch's piece. It would be great for you to read that, because it is information that the American public needs to know.
Holding a peace sign illegal in the United States of America? Is it illegal to hold up a peace sign? Is it illegal? I'm not resisting, I'm walking. I am walking. What kind of system is this? Condoleezza Rice has blood on her hands. She's killed people in Iraq, hundreds of thousands of people, and I get arrested for holding up two fingers.
Excuse me.
We're paying our respects.
I tell you what.
Hello again.
Oh!
I tell you one time. I told you off the steps. Let's go.
Oh my!
Off the steps. I'm not gonna tell you but one time.
Take it off. Take it off.
We'll go on. Get up.
Take it off.
Take them off.
Take it off.
No, I told you off the steps.
No, you didn't give her any time. Otherwise, I'll tell them all to get on the steps. Either we all go or one of us. I'm going to have you all go. Thank you, sir. Yay! I'm wearing these glasses because I have damage in my eyes from the lasers that they've been shining in my eyes every night. I have damage in my ears for having heard what you just heard out there, the constant sirens and the horns in our ears. I have damage to my shoulder, to my shooting pain that goes down here into my neck from having been beaten by a man because I was trying to deliver food. And I am just one person.
Por favor, solicité al príncipe.
Thank you.
That is the most ridiculous thing I have seen. The world community wants to keep the Iran nuclear deal. Our allies are the Germans, the French, the British. They want to keep in this deal. The world community wants to keep the deal. Let's talk about normal countries. Let's talk about Saudi Arabia. Is that who our allies are? when I was in high school. Heard what you just heard out there, the constant sirens and the horns in our ears. I have damage to my shoulder, to my shooting pain that goes down here into my neck from having been beaten by a man because I was trying to deliver food. And I am just one person.
You're muted. So
I
am now
a
unmuted.
little too long, but you get the idea.
That was great. That was great. I loved watching her being carried out of that thing. I was thinking, she's so badass. Where is she? I can't see.
She's the co-founder of Code Pink and a true activist in every sense of the word. Medea Benjamin, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, where'd you get all that stuff? Boy, that was a walk down memory lane.
I thought that was great. That was real. That was like, it was Medea's greatest hits.
Did you put that together, Peter?
Colin, our producer, put it together. I asked him to do it this afternoon. I thought it would have been a nice touch if they had you getting choked away when Debbie didn't like you showing up to her and Representative Diaz-Balard's "We must liberate Venezuela" press conference.
Well, I just went to a one about Cuba. That they were, quote, celebrating the protests of July 6th. And it was the guy, I tried to go in and the guy stopped me and he said, "We won't let you in here. We know who you are. We know from the Venezuela protests, you were the one that attacked Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz." Yeah, I make a habit of going around and attacking Congress people. That's kind of what I do.
Well, I see you're at home.
You attack
right. But they were talking about actually physically attacking. I said, I don't think I do that.
No, I see you're at home in Miami.
No, I am in DC.
So you have it set up. You have the same decor in both places.
Well, it's actually quite different if you look at it carefully. But,
all right, I can't. I just see the colors. I see the colors.
It's a lot of orange here.
It's very cool. Thank you so much for coming on. I saw you a little while ago. I don't know how long ago, talking to Katie, and you did a really good job explaining like what's going on with Ukraine, what's going on with this recent crap that we're seeing with NATO and all of the things that are really pushing us where we are. And also, we're sending cluster bombs. And it's like, is the reasoning that, well, we're the countries that aren't party to that. We are not party to that agreement. So sure, we can do that. We're not party to that. But if you would just talk a little bit about where we are right now, like what's going on in Ukraine, in terms of, post, let's say, the attempted takeover by their Wagner group.
Well, what's going on is pretty much what's been going on for the last year and a half, which is that the war is a war of attrition. It's a horrendous, brutal war. The Russian invasion has just led to so much catastrophe for the people of Ukraine. And the soldiers of both sides who are dying every single day in this senseless war that will not be won on the battlefield. And that's what we have read in the leaked Pentagon papers. That's what we see on the ground. That's what we see now when the West has pushed Ukraine to do this counteroffensive, saying, we sent you all these weapons. Come on, you got to show something for it. We got to justify this. And push them into a counteroffensive that was supposed to be in the spring, didn't happen, now has been going on for about a month already without any success. And so the stalemate continues. And yet you would think that the Biden administration would start saying, I think we better do something about this. Ukraine is in a worse situation now for negotiating than it was when they were negotiating back in March and April. Maybe it's time to move this from the battlefield. But, I'm sure those discussions are going on within the administration. But the line that comes out is victory is there. We just got to stay with them till the final victory. And of course, the administration doesn't even tell us what victory is. And when we start talking about what's happening in Congress, I do want to mention that because there is an effort to try to get the administration to say, what is victory? But so far, it's a brutal, brutal war in which so many people are dying, when in the end, if we don't go to nuclear war or we don't go to World War III, then it will be at the negotiating table. The sooner, the better.
Yeah, I mean, what really is like concerning to me is that we are all sitting here, and I feel like we know that this is about profit. Like we know that the longer they could keep this going and the more profit they could gain from it, then they'll just keep going with it. But it really does feel like to me that Zelensky is totally willing to like throw all these people under the bus to just somehow be some sort of hero. I don't understand how people are saying that if we don't support this, then we must be Putin puppets, right? Like what is the best way to counter that? Because obviously we don't want to hurt the people in Ukraine. We don't want them to be suffering, but what we're doing is obviously not helping.
I think a way to counter that is to say, look, if I lived in Russia, I would be in prison because I would be protesting this war. But I don't live in Russia. I live here in the United States. And so what I'm doing is trying to push my government to be part of the solution, not part of the problem of continuing to fuel this war. And I was recently in Ukraine, and I understand that people are suffering. There are just, our funerals happening every single day, children that will never see their fathers again, women that will never see their husbands again. It's horrific. And they have been getting a steady diet of an illusion on their television through Zelensky and others, saying that today we blew up all these Russian tanks. Today we blew up this Russian ship. Today we took all these prisoners, giving this impression that they are winning. And of course, then people think, well, we're winning. Let's just keep going. And as more people get killed, more war crimes get committed by both sides, the positions harden. So that is understandable. What you have to do is step outside of it for a moment and look at the bigger picture, which is there's not a win on the battlefield, that Crimea is an issue that really has to be negotiated, as does the Donbass. That the issue of Ukraine joining NATO has always been a red line for Russia, and that there's got to be an alternative with Ukraine neutrality. And there also has to be a way that the broader global community can step in and say, hey, you all, this isn't just about Ukraine. This is affecting the entire world. This is affecting global food prices, global energy prices. So the world should have a say in this, and the global majority wants to see an end to this war.
Speaking with Medea Benjamin, co-founder of Code Pink, I would wonder from your perspective, there's two different ways to look at this war. I personally think that the natural resources that are in Western Ukraine, which is valued in the trillions of dollars, whether it is cobalt, wheat, there are so many things that can make an economy go. There's also the issue of oil, natural gas, and how that is being sold around the world between our side, which we effectively run NATO, and of course, Russia. And then, of course, you have the issue of the climate crisis and how this is just being accelerated every day. We're seeing these heat waves that will not stop. And yet the biggest carbon emitters are the ones that are just plowing along on this endless war that they do not want to see end anytime soon, especially the likes of Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, and so on. So how do you kind of square the circle of this dynamic here of what it's going to take to kind of find some type of a consensus amongst people that, yeah, we have to end this thing sooner rather than later? Because propaganda is very, very effective in this country still.
Yeah, it's not just in this country. I spent a lot of the summer in Europe, both in Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And it is amazing the propaganda that we see there as well. and especially in Eastern Europe, where we met people who were losing their jobs as journalists because they were questioning the policies of their government, people really afraid to speak out. And this was especially true in Ukraine, where people said it was treason to even talk about negotiations. It was treason to even say, maybe we won't be able to get back Crimea and every inch of Donbass. But here in the United States, we have a different kind of censorship, which is that people with alternative views like the ones we have don't get access to the mainstream media, don't get our op-eds published in the big publications. And we get that same narrative that doesn't put the context in, doesn't explain that there has been this deep division between Eastern and Western Ukraine since the time that the Soviet Union was dissolved, and that the US has been so instrumental in fomenting this division and building up the anti-Russian sentiment by plowing billions and billions of US taxpayer dollars into creating these civil society groups that are anti-Russian. So much US interference in the overthrow of Viktor Yanukovych, who is not pro-Russia. He was neither pro-Russia or pro-Europe. He wanted the best deal for the country. And yes, he was corrupt. And yes, a lot of people didn't like him. And yes, they had the right to protest against him. But this was also manipulated by the United States and by right-wing paramilitary groups. So it's not something that just happened since the Russian invasion. And if you don't get that context, you can't understand why it happened, and you can't understand where the solutions lie. And in terms of your point about a lot of resources and is this about economics, sure, there's a lot of resources in both the eastern and western part of Ukraine. That has been part of the tug of war for many years, with governments coming in that were closer to Russia or closer to the EU, and the US wanting to make sure Ukraine was pulled into the Western sphere. When you look at the oil companies and the gas companies, they have recorded these unbelievable profits in the last year because they have been replacing the Russian energy that has been sanctioned. So while this war is a lose-lose situation for the people of Ukraine, the soldiers from Russia, it's a win for the weapons manufacturers, and it's a win for the dirty energy companies.
Yeah. I mean, that to me is like, and the people of Ukraine are just total collateral damage. And I think that the history of this is so important. Personally, I don't understand why we still have NATO. Now, I understand that it's not something that can go away overnight, but my understanding is it was created in response to the Soviet Union. So I'm not, like, to me, this whole Russia scare, this whole red thing, it didn't make sense then, but it makes even less sense now, because now the way I look at it is now you're arguing over the language of my oligarchs, right? Like, do I care whether my oligarchs speak English or Russian? And I really don't. Like, that's not my concern.
Well, yeah, I think when you look at who is getting benefits from this, the Ukrainian people will say, well, we want, and wait a minute, the Ukrainian people have to break that down, because there are Ukrainian people in the Donbass who are pro-Russian. There are Ukrainian people in Crimea who are pro-Russian. But let's take Western Ukraine, let's take the anti-Russia. They're saying, this is our sovereignty. We want to fight for it. We're asking you for help. And that is, a position that a lot of Ukrainians take. On the other hand, there are Ukrainians who do just want to see this end, who have been suffering so much from this. And I think as it goes on, we're going to see a lot more cracks in a lot more places. We're going to see a lot more cracks in Europe, where the inflation, the energy prices, now the grain prices going back up now that Russia's pulled out of that deal. That's going to create a lot of discontent. And the same is true in Russia when it really starts feeling the effect of the sanctions, which haven't kicked in all this time, which is quite remarkable. But it will. And there are many people in Russia who understand now that this is not a special military operation. This is not something that is going, that has been a short term get in and get out, some kind of victory. They're understanding this is longer term. And so there is more discontent within Russia as well. But when you talk about how are we going to move to the negotiating table, if the U.S. continues to supply the vast majority of weapons to Ukraine, the U.S. continues to torpedo any kind of peace talks, then it's not going to happen. And we live in the belly of the beast. We live in the country that needs to be transformed. And that's where the issue of what is our job as U.S. citizens or U.S. residents.
Speaking with Medea Benjamin, co-founder of Code Pink, why is there such cowardice on Capitol Hill, particularly from so-called progressives who are supposedly anti-war?
Well, that's what I really want to talk about, because I am just so furious at the Democrats. I can't believe that in all this time they wrote that one damn letter back last year in October. 29 of them signed it, withdrew it in 24 hours because they got backlash, and just about every one of them silent since then. So I wanted to talk about this amendment that a conservative Republican former Army Ranger introduced. His name is Warren Davidson, and it was introduced as an amendment to the Pentagon budget, what's called the NDAA. And it was just a simple, straightforward, I love it. It was just so clear. It said, why is this in our national interest? What is victory and how would you measure that? What is your diplomatic strategy? And how much is this going to cost us? That's all it says. We want to report. We want to hear from you on that. Do you know that there was not one Democrat that signed that? I just find that mind-blowing. Not one Democrat would even ask Biden for a report. And there were 129 Republicans who signed on to that. So it means it's gotten out of the very, very fringe of the right wing. It's of the Republican Party. It's getting a little more centrist. And the good part is that the same amendment, while it failed, is going to be a standalone bill in the fall. So we can go back to all of the people in Congress, Democrat, Republican, whatever, and say, sign this damn letter. This is this bill. This is the simplest thing that you can possibly ask for, and start pushing them again, because we don't often have a vehicle. I've been going to these Democrats, a lot of the squad members, and saying, come on, we need you to say something about peace talks. Why is that so hard? And they say, okay, we'll do it. We'll do something. We'll put out a statement. We'll put out a tweet. We'll do something. And then they never do. So at least when we have this bill, we'll have something very concrete to push them on.
That is a prime example of where I feel like we're in the bizarro universe. So now what we have is we've got the right wing wanting to have some sort of like finite information as to what we're actually getting ourselves into. And the supposed anti-war side, well, prior maybe anti-war side, is just sort of writing a blank check short of their letter months ago saying, could you maybe please, Sir Biden, could you maybe please try to do diplomatic things? We're going to give you the money anyway, but thank you. And then they retracted that. I mean, these people have no balls. And these people don't take money from the MIC.
Yeah, when I went was in the office of this Congressman, Warren Davidson, and I was talking to his staffer, he walked in and I jumped up and I said, look, I disagree with you on so many things. I'm coming from the progressive side, but I want to thank you for your amendment and your stance on Ukraine. And he looks around the room and he says, where's Barbara Lee? Where is the squad? And he said, I've worked with them on other things. He's worked with them on bills about privacy. He has relationships with them. He said, we tried and tried to make this bipartisan and we couldn't get one of them.
That's
So
crazy.
it's crazy. And
that is I mean, it's not even asking for anything that we shouldn't already have. See, quite honestly, those are things that should have been answered before our Congress, who really is who should be dealing with this and not just our executive branch. These are things we should have answers to, because I am very curious. What is victory? What does that look like? Because until we know that, why is there a blank check for this? And so many Democrats with the Ukrainian flags hanging in their houses. It's making me crazy.
You know, Medea, in years past, there was a consensus for many presidents going all the way back to LBJ, maybe even earlier than that. You could even talk about FDR during World War II, but there is something about being a wartime president. And I think that there's enough DC brain, hats, if you will, that are telling Joe that, being a wartime president, you'll get reelected, even though we're not really at war, but we all know we are. I'm wondering if there is some truth to that, and that the Democratic Party knows that their position is extremely precarious right now. The likelihood of Joe losing next year is becoming more and more realistic by the day, especially with the growing support for not just RFK in the primary, but especially Dr. West in the Green Party. And of course, there's still the looming possibility of Trump being president again. I'm wondering if this has a lot to do with just the Democratic establishment fearing the complete unraveling of the old guard within the party, and they're trying to desperately keep everybody in line for as long as they possibly can.
Well, yes, but you can imagine the kind of debates that are going on internally, because on the one side, there are those that say, let's just hold the line, keep sending the weapons, more of the long-range missiles, more of the TACMs, more of the things, the F-16s, what they're asking for, and let's throw in some cluster bombs while we're at it. And let's just keep this going until after the election, and then we can figure out what to do. And then there must be those that say, this is becoming less and less a popular position with the public, and it's not a good idea to let this drag out until the elections. Maybe we should be looking for alternatives now. But you have to understand that when the Biden administration, if they would say now is the time to start peace talks, the Republicans would go nuts. And they would say, oh my God, look at what he's doing, appeasing Putin. And a lot of the Democrats would be stuck in that position because Democrats hate Russia. So at one point, you might remember when Biden said that Putin needs an off-ramp. I think that Biden needs an off-ramp as well, and that it can be found. There are ways to put this in a spin that's a win for Ukraine, a win for Russia, a win for the US. The spin meisters can do that kind of thing. You give the Russians some concessions about US bases in Poland and Romania, or something about Ukraine not joining NATO. You give the Ukrainians the chance to join the EU and have a real economic boom. You give the U.S. The power of being negotiator. Imagine if you had the U.S. and China coming together, both using their leverage, the Chinese with Putin and the U.S. with Zelensky, and coming up with a ceasefire. I mean, that would be a great thing. So who knows which way it's going to go? Who knows who has the louder voices? But that war has its own momentum, and the momentum is to keep going. And that's what really scares me, because keep going can mean, something goes really terribly wrong. I mean, it's going wrong, terribly wrong every day, but it could become easily a war that then starts affecting Poland or affecting Romania, and bringing in the whole weight of Article 5 of NATO, meaning we have to now go in and get the troops in. And, the US has about 100,000 troops in Europe. So this could easily become a much, much wider war. And let's not forget the possibility of a blow up of the Zaporizhia nuclear plant, that is in a very precarious situation. So there's so many ways that this could get a lot worse.
Yeah. I have to go back to this because you're talking about Joe needing an off ramp, and I'm like, yeah, because he won't do well with stairs. That's what I was thinking in my head because he can't handle steps. I just terrible. No, I feel like they're just going to keep it going for as long as they can. And then, but once they start talking about, I think, what we call boots on the ground, which it shouldn't even be, that should not be like our point where we think this way. But once it gets to that, I don't think that that's where people start taking down their Ukrainian flags that are hanging when their kids are, potentially having to go and deal with this.
But doesn't that say a lot? Doesn't that say a lot about the liberal mindset in the political arena? They're so ready, willing, and able to send everyone else off to die. But as soon as it's their own, their whole attitude changes about this. They have no concept whatsoever. Again, the average American, when it comes to politics on a domestic side, are extremely ill-informed. You can times that by 10 or maybe even 100 when it comes to foreign policy. They have no concept whatsoever of other countries' customs, desires to fight, why they're fighting, what it's, etc. And that's the naivete of our country. And yes, you can blame the corporate media infrastructure that is in bed with the military-industrial complex for putting out the propaganda that they do. But at some point, there has to be a level of responsibility to the Ukrainian flag-waving liberals who think, oh, yeah, Ukraine is going to beat Russia. To me, it's like we're looking at Iraq all over again in the worst way.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yet on the other hand, I think we want to recognize that the American people get tired of wars very quickly. In fact, there was a bill that was introduced by someone on the right in the Republican Party, and it was a terrible name they put. It was called the Ukraine Fatigue Act, but they were playing on this notion that the American people get tired of war, and they do. And it's good now that we have some people running for office in different parties who are talking about the $114 billion plus that we are sending to Ukraine instead of using to fix the climate or deal with all our problems here at home, that there are people out there who are reaching millions of people, and they find that the support, they get tremendous support from the public when they talk about the need to get out of this war in Ukraine. So yes, these Democratic liberals in elected office have absolutely no spine. They are, it's despicable, the way that they are hiding from this whole issue. They just don't talk about it at all, basically. And we have to out them. And I think outing them means we push them in town halls. We should be doing sit-ins in their offices. They'll be out in their hometowns in all of August. Great to try to get them there. And then September, as soon as they're back in and we have this bill that they should be supporting, I think that we should be extreme in our lobbying to push them to say something. Why are they not supporting this bill? What do they support? They should.
Well, I'll reach out to my congresswoman, but I have very little hope for that.
Listen, the one
She's
good
the
thing.
Worst. You ought to run against her, Jennifer.
The worst thing, the one thing you could say that's a silver lining about Wasserman Schultz is that there is no second guessing who she's aligned with. She is aligned with the military-industrial complex as much as any major conglomerate in our crooked system. If you look at all of the industries that she is firmly in bed with, the MIC is right at the top. So I'm less concerned about somebody like her as I would be somebody like a Barbara Lee, who is running for the U.S. Senate right now and has chosen to be quiet about this issue when she was the one sitting U.S. Congress member, and this was a completely different political environment in the summer of 2002 when she stood up and said, I'm not supporting a war in Iraq. I know that this is BS. I understand we were attacked less than a year ago on 9/11, but I'm not supporting this. And she took a hell of a lot of heat for it. What the hell is she going to take right now by standing up and saying, yeah, this is a absolute, this is our generation's Vietnam. This is not going to end with any type of decisive victory in any way that you think. That's not what this is. And the same is true for members of the squad. We talk all the time about he may be as conservative as it gets in U.S. politics, but Thomas Massie at least has a spine. He at least stands up for what he believes in. He's somebody who stood up to Donald Trump and said, I ain't supporting his ass. And it's like, okay, you know what? You don't have to agree with him politically, but at least you can respect that he is an honest actor. And there's very few of them that seem to do that. They just want to go wherever the wind blows. I'm sure you have contacts on the Hill that, will off the record whisper to you exactly what's really going on here. What have you heard as far as why they're just not willing to take a stand?
Because they're told that on national security, we have to be united as a party. You don't know the things that the administration knows. Stay out of this. Focus on the domestic issues, which is what the public cares about. It's not good for your campaign. It's not good for the party to show division on national security issues, particularly an issue as important as this. So that's what they're hearing. And, I hear from people saying, well, how does it feel to be on the side of Marjorie Taylor Greene? How does it feel to be on the side of of Lauren Boebert? And I said, well, how does it feel to be on the side of President Lula in Brazil, the leaders of 6 African nations who are trying to mediate, Pope Francis, and the majority of people represented throughout the world who don't want to get involved in this, who see it as a proxy war and say we're not going to take sides. Or I talk about the religious leaders who just signed a new letter supporting the Pope Francis's efforts at mediation. So there are lots of people not in the Congress who are on our side. And, we just have to build up from the bottom. One of the things that has pained me tremendously in all of this is the lack of support from the environmental movement. We have written a letter, a very mild letter saying, this war is terrible for the environment because of this reasons, and therefore peace talks to ceasefire would be a good thing. We get groups like Extinction Rebellion, Extreme Energy, some of the more radical groups. We got 350.org to sign, and then they pulled their name off of it. We couldn't get Bill McKibben to sign it. And look at Greta Thunberg, who was just meeting with Zelensky. So getting the environmentalists has been very, very difficult. We're still trying, but it's been so disappointing.
Well, there's a
I have
reason
some theories on that. We actually did a show not that long ago with the authors of Bright Green Lies. And, a lot of the stuff in the environmental movement is not necessarily really that environmental, right? Like it's almost like propagandized. And again, the concept of a Green New Deal is awesome. Love the concept. But when we're talking about the real environmental solutions, the bright green lies being that, oh, we'll just switch over to solar and wind and everything will be fine. Like we can actually do that. And it's just not feasible. So there's other things that are bigger at play. And I think a lot of the environmentalists are not looking that far into the future.
Yeah, the other problem that you have to consider, and this was something that happened during the 2020 election, was when particularly the Sunrise Movement, and we are very friendly with one of the top people in the Sunrise Movement. I told him, and I will tell anybody, the second you lock arms with the Democratic Party establishment, it's over. Whatever intentions you had as an organization, as a nonprofit, throw them out the window, because the Democratic Party is now your maker, and they will decide for you whether you can do anything related to an environmental push. So the only group that's out there right now that really seems to just be, giving the middle finger to the Democratic establishment is Climate Defiance. We had one of the leaders of their group on our live stream. It was a great conversation, and they're definitely disrupting. I think that that's the best shot. that we've got
Doesn't
right
it
now.
make your heart feel good, Medea, when you see those kids sitting in and putting up a sign and making Amy Klobuchar have to leave? Doesn't it make your heart happy?
I love them, and I talk to them regularly, and I just bow down to them. I think they're the greatest.
It's so nice to see that there's like a new generation of people that are actually walking the walk. Because like something that we always talk about regarding politics is that on the inside, they don't want to pass the baton. They don't want to pass a baton. These people want to sit in this office until they have to rip the chair away from their carcass.
Well, look at Mitch McConnell today.
Oh,
Rose. Oh my God, how scary is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want to pass the baton, but I feel like for me, it's one of the most important things that I do is mentor people. I don't want to be doing this forever. Someone else needs to be, you know what I mean? It's like there's a reason that older people slow down a little bit more. So I think it's so important.
I'm in that position and handed the baton over to younger people at Code Pink. I don't go to meetings. I don't even know who a lot of the staff is now, and I'm delighted by that. We have to do that. And you just look at these people in Congress and say, what is wrong with you? Dianne Feinstein, what is wrong with you? Don't you want to go gracefully out? Of course, we should have term limits. And it's terrible that we don't have that, whether it's on the Supreme Court with a appointment for life. But in our own Congress, it's so sad, especially when you go into the Senate to see. I think Caitlin Johnson today had a great piece where she called it a elderly care facility for psychopaths.
Yeah, that's actually really good. Well, I like her. She's great. She's awesome. But that's actually really good. It is. It does seem like assisted living for psychopaths. That's really good.
Yeah, we actually had Tom Hartman on the program last week, and he actually thinks that there is a case to be made for eliminating the Senate. Like it's gotten to the point now where because of the lack of equal representation based on, the 2 Senate rule per state, even though you have states that have, not even 5% of the population of California having the same amount of representation. So that argument is very just in a lot of ways.
But did you ask Tom Hartman about Ukraine?
Unfortunately, when we have Tom on our show, we're only basically given the opportunity to talk about very specific things like his books. He's very smart.
I agree. Look,
but he will not cross the Democratic Party.
No.
And this is true of a lot of people. And listen, Jen won't do it. But there was a time that he came on and I pushed him. I pushed him multiple times, and I could tell he just wasn't going to go for it. Because that's
what it's when we talk with people, and he's an author, he comes on, he's talking about his book, and I don't feel the need to do gotchas with him. First of all, like that's not my function. My function is like I'm trying to educate people. He has a really good book out. I liked it. That's what we're talking about. And also I don't want to preclude people from coming back. So we have to sort of walk this fine line between like attacking people that we know that we have certain disagreements with. And generally, I just tend to let's work with people on what we do agree with and not, because what point?
Yeah,
what
but Jen, we should be able to have those conversations in a nice way. And I love Tom Hartman. I've been friends with him for years and years. I used to be on his show all the time. I can't get on his show. And I've had people joining in a little campaign saying, put Medea on. He just won't. And that makes me feel terrible because I feel like somebody like Tom, you could have a nice conversation and agree to disagree, but he won't even go there.
My personal opinion is that, when you were on his show, when, Ari Riebenhoff was on there, when Sam Sachs was on there, you guys were part of our team. But let's not forget that once it became clear that Bernie was becoming a force and Trump was becoming a force, and then there was this whole, we have to use Russia as the boogeyman to shy away from all of the corruption that we did during the 2016 primary, it became a non-starter to even be affiliated with RT America. So once Tom's show was taken off the air and he had to go off on his own, he basically changed. I know exactly what he was like. He would converse about anything during the days when he had his show on RT. But once that was over, it became walk the fine line for the Democratic establishment. It sucks that it's that way, and I wish more people had the courage to say, I'm not playing this stupid game. The American people deserve better. But maybe it's just, he's in his 70s. It's an old hat thing where he just does what he's known for so long. We need more courageous actors that are out there. We're desperate for them. And that's why I think it's a good place to close regarding your thoughts on Dr. Cornel West running as a third-party candidate for president, and whether you think he has the opportunity to really shake things up if he builds some type of an infrastructure.
Absolutely. I think it's thrilling. I'm so excited. I run to see what new interviews he's done. He's so brilliant. He's so wonderful to listen to. He's so good on all of the issues. I mean, you have, our Robert Kennedy, where in the beginning I was like, yeah, it's great to hear him talk about Ukraine and unraveling the empire, and then the Israel stuff, and then all the other stuff. But with Cornell, it's like, yes, yes, yes. So I think it's great. And I do think, the Democrats are really in a tizzy about this, and will be more and more as his campaign picks up speed and picks up support. And I think it's fabulous that he's out there articulating these issues. Ukraine is not the only issue that we care about. There's lots of issues. But I'm so happy to hear somebody talking on the Ukraine issue in a way that makes sense, in a way that challenges the Biden administration, in a way that puts it in the context of the militarization of this country and what it's doing to hollow out our economy. So I think it's really wonderful, and that it has potential to really shake things up.
I do too. And the difference, I think, with Dr. West is he doesn't have an agenda. He's on a mission. And when I look at other people in politics, like they have their agenda of their checklist of what they're trying to do. He doesn't have that. He has this general values as to who he is and what he stands for, and that permeates everything that he does. He doesn't need to know everything about everything. His values will direct things in that direction that they need to go in when you bring in people that know all the details. So that's why I see him like he's not on an agenda for himself in any way. And that to me is very apparent. And that is why he is so different from anybody else in this.
And the fact that he can elicit a great discussion, that it's very hard for the journalist to do the gotcha on him, because he'll turn it around into always a loving place. And when he goes to this loving place, it's really, really hard for them. And so I'm just delighted that we have somebody who is reaching so many people now. But I also do want to say I'm glad that crazy man Trump is taking a position on Ukraine, calling for negotiations. I'm glad that crazy, crazy, crazy man DeSantis is taking a position calling for a ceasefire. I'm glad that Robert Kennedy is taking the position that he's taking. And I think there will be more libertarians that will step into this race who will also take that position. And that all helps us to shift the narrative. And the last ones will be in Congress, and the very last ones will be the ones in the White House. But we have to build the momentum up to get to them.
Well, we're totally going to do that, believe me, but I have to get back in the White House first, and then we can decide after that. That'll be really great.
Well, we're living in this world where Republicans are Democrats and Democrats are Republicans. We're like going back to before the Civil War thing. Like this is, it's almost like, see, you're Medea, you're anti-war, you're standing still in space, and it's like they're rotating around you. So now it's like you're on par with the Trump. If you stand still long enough, like everything will come back around.
I got news for you. If you look at our history, with the exception of obviously what happened, during the Bush administration, the history of our country when it comes to war is started by the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party. Now, why that is, I can't really say. But
in more recent history, and even if you just go back to things like the Iraq War, that was certainly started by Republicans with a lot of Democratic support. And the same, I mean, they're two war parties. We know that. I do want to get a plug in for this Peace in Ukraine coalition, because we've got to work together and build up a movement. And the only way we're going to do that is through coalitions. And this Peace in Ukraine coalition, what I love about it is that it's not only organizations, but you can join as an individual. And you can come to the monthly meetings that we have and hear what people are talking about and throw out your own ideas for what you think we should be doing. And
Guys,
that's
it's peaceinukraine.org.
peaceinukraine.org. And we got great resources. We've got videos. We got flyers you can download and take to your farmer's market and give out. We have flyers you can take to the Oppenheimer movie. We've got things, signs you can just put up in your window if that's all you feel that you can do. But there are lots of things, and codepink.org as well has this Summer of Peace with a lot of great ideas and materials. And, my plea is to get involved. If people are listening, watching, and feel that this war in Ukraine is dangerous, can be taking us into a nuclear war, can be taking us into a World War III, then let's do something about it. Join us. Contact peaceinukraine.org, join codepink.org, become part of a growing, diverse group of people who are actually taking actions. We have a rapid response media team that responds every day to stuff that's coming out in the media. We have an interfaith group. We have a group working on the environmental issues. We have a group working on nuclear issues, because believe it or not all of the groups that have been working on arms control will even sign a letter calling for peace talks in Ukraine. So we've got to push them on that front as well. So anyway, all of this is to say we need more people involved. Please contact us.
Thank you so much for that info. Yeah, I'm going to have to go in and sign up on that. That's really helpful. I appreciate that very much. I didn't know there was such a thing.
You really are the genuine article, and especially at a time like this, it's like Orwell said, speaking truth can be a revolutionary act, especially at a time where it seems like so few are willing to do it.
Not in our Congress.
No.
Medea, if I were sitting there, I would have signed that.
If you were sitting there, I would be giving you hugs and kisses every day, because you would be so wonderful, and you would have gotten rid of one of the worst Democrats in Congress.
I wouldn't even call her a Democrat. I would just call her a terrible politician. Because a politician...
No. Reclaiming my time. Oh, my God.
Yeah, well, you see the way that she conducts herself, when it was with Schellenberger and Taibbi came on the podcast shortly thereafter and even said, I completely forgot she was in Congress. And then you realize, oh, wait, yeah, this terrible person is here still thinking that she's the cock of the walk and the one who's in charge of all of this stuff, and never misses an opportunity to really stand on ceremony. And it really goes to show you just how terrible the system, how far it's sunk. Because I even mentioned to Jen, look, I understand that people get put on certain committees and certain people have certain credentials that they either have or lack thereof. The idea that you sit on the Judiciary Committee without a law degree just goes to show you how absolutely, completely broken this system is. She has no business sitting on that committee, and yet she's there.
But you think she thinks she should be sitting on appropriations?
I didn't say that either. I'm just saying the idea that somebody without a law degree sits on the Judiciary Committee it just shows that the system's a joke. It's just a joke now. And when the people start not taking this seriously, they're losing faith in the system that is broken, but now they just don't even trust elections anymore. Now we know that we're reaching a point where there's going to be some type of a cataclysmic change in our system, and we just have to be ready for it. And I think what you're doing, what Dr. West is doing, we have to set our egos aside and just fight on the working class front. That's why, we're just huge advocates for the labor movement, because that's where it's going to happen. If anything's going to change significantly in this country, it's going to happen through labor. And that, I think, is a great place to close on. Your final thoughts.
Well, I also want to say that there's big changes happening throughout the world. And when we look at Latin America, so many exciting changes happening there. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is one of the ones who tries to stop all of that. In fact, tomorrow there's going to be a hearing in Congress about Petro in Colombia and the socialism that he's bringing to Colombia, and what can we do to stop that? It's really disgusting how these people in Congress want to turn back any positive changes that are happening in places around the world, that want to get out from the yoke of the U.S., want to have policies that actually help their own people. So while I agree with you, the labor movement is where it's at. Changes from the working class in this country is what we have to be supporting. But we also have to be supporting people in other parts of the world who are rising up, putting progressives in power, and to stop our government and stop people like Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz from trying to roll back the will of people around the world.
Yeah, I've been extra really annoyed lately about the lack of Jewish support for anything having to do with Palestine. This has been very frustrating to me as a Jewish person, that of the 9 people that didn't sign that ridiculous whatever that was, that we hail praise to Israel letter.
And it's not a racist state, and it's not apartheid, and they will be our best friends forever.
And not one Jew in Congress, not one Jew could stand up for, like, I am disgusted.
Wait a minute. Were you expecting Dan Goldman to stand side by side with Rashida?
I'm just saying that there are a ton of Jewish people in Congress. The truth is, most of the Jewish people in Congress, most of us don't know their names because we don't know most people in Congress. We know the ones who stand out, but not one person in Congress could. Why was Rashida Tlaib standing there alone when she was like, I am disgusted with my people there. That's how I feel. I feel disgusted.
I am too, but it's not just the Jews in Congress. It's that only 9 members out of 435 would stand up. Oh my God, that is so pathetic.
It's embarrassing. They're so scared. They're so scared of like AIPAC, and they're so scared of these things. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to you people? You're not going to win again? Is that the whole thing? Like, what? Like, I don't understand why you're there. It's like, if you're so worried about keeping your job, but you're not doing your job. I find it infuriating.
And now that AIPAC is primarying progressives, it's like, people just afraid. And it's all about getting in power, staying in power, and supporting the party. So that's where we come in, because we're above party politics. We're not interested in the bipartisan fights or the partisan fights. And I think just staying true to the things that we care about, whether it's living wages for people in this country, a healthcare system that really works, dealing with the climate crisis, and stopping the wars and the militarism. We're at a point where we're spending $1 trillion of our money on the military now. We've got to do something about it. And being part of this two-party system just ain't the way forward.
No. I hope Cornell really can at least cover the 5% or more. I am so hopeful, and I am hopeful that the change will be just the campaign will do on itself just by being. But oh my God, I really think he can get over the 5% mark, and that would be amazing.
Well, when James Carville has to go out on TV this early to let everyone know that Vladimir Putin is in the back pocket of Dr. Cornel West and Jill Stein, you better listen to that old wheeling guy from the Bayou, because he definitely knows a thing or two. And since you live in D.C., you probably know where him and Miss Maitland have their beautiful townhouse right on the Potomac. Those things don't just pay for themselves. They're very expensive, and that's a very expensive consulting lifestyle that you have to, maintain constantly. But
they call Jill Stein a Russian agent.
Oh my God! Yeah, pathetic. But as you know, it's because they're worried, and that's why they're doing this.
I know.
Right. They are very concerned, and good. They should be.
The next few days, I'm with this group that's here from all over the country, focusing on Korea, and that it's 70 years since the armistice was signed, but there's still no peace treaty, and of course, a tremendous conflict. And we've been going to Congress and begging them to sign on to a piece of legislation that says, let's get a peace treaty. And it's really hard to do that as well. So anything that has to do with peace is unfortunately a very difficult ask in our Congress these days. But we've got to turn that around, and we got to keep on fighting until peace becomes the norm. Peace becomes what people in Congress want to promote, not the military-industrial congressional complex.
Definitely.
Thank you
Thank
for all
you
that you
so much,
do.
Medea.
Guys,
Thank
if
you.
you're not currently supporting Code Pink, please do. We love you. We will definitely talk to you soon.
Good to
Bye,
see you.
Medea.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
One of the very best.
It's
And somebody
lovely.
who
She's
has always put
lovely.
her money where her mouth is. And at a time where, again, in the Democratic establishment, it has basically become an act of heroism to stand up to the very system that has completely engulfed the Democratic Party establishment. And again, we have our theories as to why that is the case. I think a lot of it has to do with what I suggested, it being this idea that Biden's best shot is basically a wartime president. I don't know if that really.
You think it's that? I don't know. I think it's like an intersection of different interests but the bottom line is it's profitable.
Yeah, it's profitable, but you also have to remember that when Bernie was getting very close to the nomination and had all the momentum in the world, all of this corporate money, and Joe Biden couldn't raise any money when he was running for president. But as soon as they decided that they were all going to coalesce behind him, the corporate money was shooting out of his ears. Like he got twice as much money from private insurance and big pharma than Donald Trump did. There is no defense of this.
Well, this is like one of those things where I tell people, if I were to write down their characteristics and their resumes on paper without putting their name on it, all these women that I talk to, I'm like, you guys would end up picking Trump over Biden and you don't even realize it. And that's the thing. People don't realize it because they just look at the person and they don't look at the actions. So we do need a million Medeas. I know. She is awesome. Talk about small but mighty.
Yes. And she definitely wants you to run against Debbie. She ain't hiding.
Well, because she knows more than anybody.
Debbie is one of the absolute, most people know Debbie for, what she did during, being chair of the DNC.
Yeah, people like Medea have known her for long before that.
Yeah, no, Debbie has been, for those of you who may not know, Debbie has been a pro-war hawk of the highest order. Basically, since the moment she walked into Congress in 2004. Like, this is not something that just happened out of nowhere. It wasn't just sort of a gradual buildup. She was somebody who was on board with this the moment she got to the Hill and has been this way for 20 years. So it's scary that it's that way. And it's unfortunate that we are down here in South Florida and have to deal with that, knowing that we are seeing the effects of the over-militarization of the world and the fact that we are witnessing the continued deforestation that we're desperately trying to stop. Sea level rise.
So can I just say that both militarization and deforestation brings us to what we were going to discuss with Cop City, that was sort of tying it all in. So when we get back to that it is both demilitarization and militarization and deforestation.
It's a big deal. Last thing we will mention before we go this evening is right now there appears to be a tentative deal between the Teamsters Union and UPS to avert a strike, which was to commence on Tuesday of next week, August 1st. Now, the terms that were put together appear to be fairly favorable in terms of the wage increases for the part-time workers and the fact that now they will have AC in their trucks. The idea that was something that needed to be negotiated is unbelievable. But there's a lot of rumblings out there that they could have gotten more and that they probably should have striked because there has not been a significant strike in the United States in a very long time. And I think the American people from their perspective, need to know exactly what that's all about. Like what exactly that would look like if there was some type of a major strike. And here is just a brief recap from exactly what went down. And again, it's pretty brief, but this will give you a realistic idea of exactly, what they were fighting for, and if hopefully this is going to last, or if maybe they pull back at the last minute. Slow on the uptake for me. One sec.
A tentative deal. Steve Patterson now with late details.
Tonight, in the dead heat of an emerging summer of strikes, UPS reaching a tentative agreement with its 340,000 worker-strong Teamsters union, avoiding a potentially economy-rattling labor action. The union, whose members still need to ratify the deal, saying it secured a new 5-year contract, boosting Teamster wages and solidifying safety issues.
But I think it's a great victory for the labor movement in general. We actually took on corporate America and won today.
In a statement, UPS said the deal provides industry-leading pay and benefits while retaining the flexibility we need to stay competitive. But in what's being dubbed a hot labor summer, so much remains on the line.
And used without our permission.
In New York's Times Square today, a day of action highlighting the ongoing actors and writers strike.
We will not have you take away our right to work and earn a decent living.
Those picket lines, with potential to expand, 150,000 auto workers began negotiations for a new contract with U.S. automakers this month. More than 26,000 American Airlines flight attendants preparing to vote on strike authorization. And local actions, like an ongoing Los Angeles hotel workers strike, drags on for weeks.
Workers, whether they're in the hotel industry, whether they are in the logistics, whether they are in the entertainment industry, they are feeling economic pressure and economic insecurity.
And while several of the disputes are fueled by traditional wage disagreements, there are huge fears over new technologies like AI.
There is tremendous insecurity among workers about being displaced by new technology.
And back in LA, writers and actors continue to picket in the heat in a labor action forecasted to stretch on for weeks, if not months.
Thanks for watching our.
I think it's pretty
obvious.
obvious.
We're seeing things heating up literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I think the SAG-AFTRA, WGA strike is going to last a lot longer. And the reason it's going to last a lot longer is they don't really affect the economy, but the UPS workers do. And if they were to shut down even for a few days, it would rattle the economy.
I'm very skeptical about whatever this tentative agreement is, because when I hear things like that, what I hear is, all right, we're putting you off for another couple of weeks and we could still ultimately screw you anyway. And then they just keep diluting. It's almost like when you're icing a team in sports, like you just kind of keep diluting. And then you also lose public support. So I'm just skeptical. I hope that according to what I heard, this is a really good deal. Like this is one of the better labor deals that bargaining agreements they've had. And so I hope that this is what it looks like it is.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm trying to find the article that was written a few days ago, where I don't remember which publication it was, but essentially what the story was about is that if the UPS workers went on strike, that this particular person was advising Biden to break that strike as well, and avoid having any type of an economic catastrophe. I got to tell you, if the UPS workers did strike and started costing the American economy billions of dollars a day, I think Biden would break it. I think he would do exactly what he did to the railroad.
Oh yeah, well that's my concern. But see, then you get to the question of at what point do workers say, screw this, we don't need permission to strike. The point of a strike is to cause an interruption. The point of a strike is that we're not being heard. Power is not going to concede anything. So it's like, I don't know at what point you can't keep breaking strikes where they just say to hell with it, we're going on strike. Because that's the problem that we're having. It's like, then what is the power?
Well, I think people realize that there is power to be had, but are they willing to exercise it is the question. And I think a lot of people are afraid to see what might happen.
Well,
But I
this
also
goes
think-
hand in hand with what we're always talking about, which is if we had a social safety net in this country and we had things like healthcare and housing and different services, then we could see something like a general strike be more feasible. But we don't have that infrastructure in place. So people can't do that. And that has been systematically the goal of corporations over this time. It's you're simultaneously weakening unions while simultaneously screwing people on their money so that there's no recourse. That's the whole point of this. So at some point, yeah, well, I know they're called wildcat strikes. They shouldn't even be called anything. That should just be a strike. A strike, you shouldn't have to have permission to do it anyway. That's the whole point. If somebody's going to give you permission to strike, then they're probably just going to meet your demands. So I don't see how that, makes sense, but
yeah,
I hope they get everything, and I hope that it's legit. My concern is that it won't be, and then it'll be sort of like the momentum will be lost, and it'll just be gone. And I hope that's not the case.
But the one thing that is painfully obvious that I think a lot of people should recognize, and this was an article that was written at the end of last week, and it was in the New York Post. And it's true. Mr. O'Brien, who is the head of the Teamsters union, did he really say it this way or not? I don't know. But he says, to a man, to the president, Teamsters leader tells Biden to butt out of labor talks with UPS as strike looms. Now, is the strike still looming? Who knows?
Well, right. So that was a while ago already. So now,
but are they definitely taking this deal? Is the question.
Well, it's like a 2-week. It's extending it like 2 weeks, is my understanding. So that's what worries me, is that this is one of those sort of like stopgap things that they could just keep putting it off and not really get any recourse. But O'Brien seems pretty on top of it. So I would hope that they don't just sort of let this go.
The White House shouldn't be concerned with the Teamsters. They should be concerned with corporate America, which continues to make billions upon billions of dollars off the sweat of our members. We're not going to allow anybody to implement a contract. So that's what Sean O'Brien, head of the Teamsters, said. I mean, again, I don't want to pick on him, but you just look at the guy, and it's just so obvious that he is not in charge, that he is just doing what he's told, and he is a completely corporate captured leader of the free world. How people can't see this or still don't see it is beyond me.
Well, no, because even if they see it, they still think Trump is worse.
Well,
I think honestly, it's debatable to me. That would actually be a good debate. I'm not usually for debates. I actually would support a debate as to who is worse between Biden and Trump, because that really is a toss-up. See, for me, usually debates are things where it could go either way, whereas people want me to debate on things that I'm not debating. That would be a good debate.
Well, the other problem, of course, with Biden is that here's a guy who just lied through his teeth his entire campaign that I'm going to be the biggest union president you've ever seen. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be on the side of workers. And he has almost universally been on the side of corporations, like almost universally.
Completely. I think, honestly, it's been worse than Reagan with the air traffic controllers.
Well, when he did what he did to the railroad workers, that was the single biggest union bust since Reagan fired the air traffic controllers, 1,000%. There had never been anything close to it like that. That was a shot across the bow to every labor union across the country. You have an anti-labor president in the White House, and he is not afraid to exercise that power if you get out of line. There's a difference between what you say and what you do. And what President Biden has done since he's been in the White House has not been a friend of labor, period.
No, I mean, well, that was the final thing for me I'm not voting for him. That's not going to happen. I don't know. It was like the bam, bam, the left, right between that and the Willow Project. Like those all happened kind of like pretty quickly back to back. But yeah, I think what their solution is, I mean, and I'm not like some brilliant strategist, but my suggestion for the Democratic Party, if they're worried about Cornel West, is to, I don't know, maybe do something. It's crazy, but like my thought is.
But we talk about that all the time. Here's the problem. The system's broken. There is no magic conspiracy here. This is very crystal clear. President Biden and his cohorts are completely captured by corporate special interests. End of discussion. And that's why we don't have nice things, and why we, in many ways, can't have nice things.
No, we could have nice things. Everybody, and make no mistake, poverty is a policy choice. Poverty is a policy choice. And so long as people keep voting for people like this, they're making that choice. We're choosing poverty. And by the way, I'm not a Trumper, so, also bad.
I'm totally a Trumper. You believe in me, believe me. And so,
you were a douche in the 80s.
So on Monday, we will be having a nice history lesson. Hope you guys will tune in. We are going to have retired Professor Don Hickey of Wayne State College. He is considered the foremost informed professor nationwide when it comes to the War of 1812. Now, for those of you who do not know much about the War of 1812, you are definitely in for a real treat, because this is the most important forgotten war in our nation's history. It really could have changed basically what we are today in so many ways. It ushered in the era of good feelings, which was relatively short-lived up until the point of President Jackson's presidency, which really ramped things up, especially with the birth of the likes of John Calhoun in South Carolina, who was one to really ramp up the slave trade. Then, of course, you had John Brown in the Midwest, all culminating in the Civil War. But there were many
Am I
things.
expected to attend this and take notes?
Maybe.
Am I participating in this discussion? I feel like I'm going to just be learning stuff. That's cool and all.
Well, that's what we should do. We should learn about our history. And I think the War of 1812.
We're just not allowed to learn about Black people history. So as long as this doesn't involve Black people, then we can discuss it historically. Otherwise, we can't have that.
Okay. So anyway, the War of 1812 is a war that we actually came probably much closer to losing than we ever did the American Revolution. Yeah, all wars are bad, even the ones we've won. And so you guys are going to be in for a treat there. Remember, we are now moving to Thursday nights. And I believe, Jen, we're going to be starting at 8 p.m. on Thursdays.
Yeah, because hopefully we'll be able to then have the Gen Z report will come on after us. Tomorrow night on the Gen Z report, they will be discussing the death of monogamy. That got pushed to this week. So, and I'm actually going to be in New Smyrna with our lead person where he is on that. So
very cool. And then, of course, on that Thursday, we should be with Hannah Riley of Stop Cop City. So that conversation should be very interesting. We may also.
Did you see this?
Did I see what?
That
Please.
comment.
I don't know who C. Park is, Notary.
Right, but it's someone that probably knows that war. Okay,
well, if that's true, if you can have them email Generational Change, or if you can shoot us an email of how to get in touch, generationalchange@gmail.com is our email. So by all means, please forward that information. And yes, the Korean War was terrible. It's obviously not the Vietnam War, but it set the stage for what was going on in the South Pacific post-World War II. So yes, please, we would obviously be very happy to speak with C. Park if that is who is the foremost, what would be the best word?
Aficionado,
connoisseur.
And I would say, especially in light of what Medea just shared about what they're working on right now, that is ridiculous that that they can't end the war in Korea. Like it's
technically, yeah, if you're being technical, it's never officially ended, which is amazing. But really not.
Well, from our perspective, it was never even a war, was it?
Not really.
No, it was like Vietnam. Like for us, it was a conflict. For them, it was a war. So that's on their end, not our end.
Yeah, they call it the Korean conflict. That is what they called it.
Yeah.
So if you guys do appreciate our content and like what we're doing and appreciate all the new, the growing strength of our show, because we are getting a little better at this every day, that we obviously have a new producer, and this is how our way of being able to afford a new producer. Go to patreon.com/generational change. For as little as $5 a month, you can get the wonderful Lulu sticker as an intro gift. For those of you who are so considerate to become a $10 a month patron, we still have the Last Mansion Parliamentarian bumper sticker. You may want to get your hands on this bad boy. And then, of course, for those who are very, very generous and would like to donate $25 or become a $25 a month patron.
We also have YouTube membership.
Yes, YouTube membership is also now all the craze. So you can also go over to Cash App at $GenChange and make a contribution for $25 or more and get yourself one of the Generational Change baseball jerseys. We would certainly appreciate any and all support that you can provide. And this is what allows us to have on wonderful guests like Medea Benjamin to talk about the most important issues of the day related to foreign policy. And then, of course, with the $ below for YouTube memberships. We would obviously appreciate each and every one of you to join when you can.
It all helps. It all helps.
It really
And really, more than anything, share forward. You know, the more people that click, see, it helps us. Oh, pack a day. And by the way, I was going to ask you, I'm in South Carolina right now. I'm in Charleston right now.
Pack a day. We are so happy to have you. Thank the algorithms for once. We can thank our producer for figuring out how to work that algorithm. Our numbers are slowly but steadily creeping up.
Yeah.
We did have a big guest on Monday with Norman Finkelstein. We had consistent viewership over 50, which was great. Today it's been closer to 30, but nevertheless.
But you know, I'm blaming that on Keaton and Russell.
Yeah, that's all Keaton and Russell's fault. So because Due Dissidence and also Jimmy Dore and also, I don't know if Katie may be going live at this time, but Wednesday night seems to be a night where a lot of live streams are going all at once.
It used to be Thursday, and we did Thursday, and that's why we switched to Wednesday. So it's sort of like, we're being chased around the week board.
Yes, we are. And so remember, guys, next Thursday, 8 p.m., that is going to be our new start time. We have always been Monday at 9 p.m. That is not changing. That is a very good night.
Nobody's interested, I don't think, in our Monday.
Nobody's interested in Monday, so that's basically all us. So we've got that on lock. But yes, any and all contributions are certainly appreciated. And again, that's Cash App, $GenChange. And of course, become a YouTube member. We are certainly appreciative if you want to become one of those. A pack a day, we're confident we'll probably join at some point. Super chats are obviously appreciated, but we also want you to get the most bang for your buck. We hope you guys enjoyed the show. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe, share, do all those wonderful things that we ask you to do. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you Monday.
Bye, y'all.